Ukraine says fierce fighting in the eastern town of Soledar is continuing following conflicting reports about whether the town had been captured. This comes amid a major shakeup at the top of Russia's military as Russian President Vladimir Putin appoints a new commander to take charge of his war.
As Ukrainian soldiers fight to repel Russian attacks, the sound of explosions is relentless. The battle for Soledar and the nearby city of Bakhmut is proving to be one of the fiercest so far following Russia's invasion. Ukraine's defense leaders say their soldiers are fighting stubbornly, despite claims Russia had taken control of the area.
The intensity of shelling rose by about 70%, but nothing changed radically. Our fighters are holding the defense as they used to hold it.
Taking Soledar and Bakhmut is key to the Kremlin's goal to claim all of the Donetsk region. Russian leaders have praised the work of their troops on the ground.
A truly gigantic work has been done in Soledar. This is absolutely selfless and heroic action, and not only in Soledar, but in many areas where offensive operations are being carried out.
Both sides have suffered heavy losses in the fighting. As the battle rages on in the east, friends and family of a soldier killed in Soledar gather for his funeral in Bucha.
Those who die in war are mostly the young ones. Unfortunately, there are many warriors we are burying, as you see all the new graves behind me. They are the ones who sacrificed their lives for our peace.
Russia's bid to take Soledar is said to be key to boosting its military morale, a win many say Moscow also desperately wants after struggling with numerous setbacks in recent months.
And we can now speak to Justin Crump. He's a security analyst and the CEO of Civiline. He joins us from the UK. Mr. Crump, so good to see you again. I want to start with what's being called Ukraine's bloodiest battle. We've been getting conflicting reports about what's going on in Soledar and Bakhmut. What's your assessment of the situation?
Well, as you said, and we just heard in the report, it is very confused. Claims by both sides, differing claims, actually, interestingly, from different parts of the Russian military as to what's been going on. I think without doubt, though, the Russians have obviously achieved something of an advance around the town of Soledar, so north of Bakhmut, and that situation remains fluid. And they've certainly made some other minor advances towards Bakhmut itself. Soledar is considered important because it starts to unhinge the city of Bakhmut itself. So it's kind of a stepping stone to taking Bakhmut, which obviously the Russians would celebrate further. They've got a long way to go from there, regardless. This is still only a stepping stone on the way to the main cities of the northern Donbas, like Sloviansk and Kramatorsk and Konstantinivka. And there is a way to go before the Russians are close to that. So, while it might be celebrated by Russia that they are making some advances finally, but after 6 months, they're only 20 kilometers from their start line in the Donbas. And this was not even a particularly significant strategic objective. They've still got that to do.
Putin just put a new commanding general in charge of the Ukraine operation. This is at least the third change at the top of the mission. What does that tell us about the state of affairs on the Russian side?
And this is mainly a political move, we think, and it touched on the report earlier about the Wagner group and potential political infighting within elements of the Russian military and the PMCs, and of course the government itself. And it is certainly a government that's run on the idea that people are in competition with each other for the boss's favor at almost every level, particularly when it comes to being around Putin. And the MOD is possibly concerned about Sorokin's own independence and apparent success on the battlefield compared to previous commanders, and also the influence of the Wagner group is something else that's playing out in Bakhmut and Soledar. And so I think that move has to be seen in that context. It is pretty unusual, effectively, for a head of a nation's entire ground forces to be then put in charge of the military operation as well. It certainly questions that he'd be able to do that job at all well. So I think it needs to be seen as a political move and as part of that infighting more than anything else. I don't think it'll have a particularly positive operational effect on the battlefield for Russia at all.
Ukraine's Western partners have steadily increased their deliveries of weapons to Ukraine since the start of the invasion. Now, with Poland's offer of Leopard 2 tanks on the table, waiting for other allies to join, do you think we'll soon see European battle tanks join the war?
I think it's definitely getting closer, and the British offer of 10 to 12 Challenger 2 tanks needs to be seen in this context as well. The numbers being talked about aren't very high, but it's all about unlocking access, particularly to the tanks from Germany, because there are many older versions of the Leopard 2 that are in stockpiles, actually many in Germany, but also in Finland and in Poland and elsewhere, that could be donated to Ukraine. But there's been this fear throughout the conflict that this was a red line for Russia providing heavier equipment. We heard this before when it came to the supply of the multiple launch rocket systems like HIMARS and Mars that came from Germany in the end. But it took a while, I think, before nations built up the confidence that these donations were not going to escalate the conflict. We're the best part of a year in, and so far nothing has escalated the conflict with Russia. So I think nations are increasingly confident that the supply of a small number of tanks will not be the thing that escalates, will not be the thing that brings the population of Germany into danger, and I think rightly so. So while we might just see a few now, it's all about unlocking much bigger supply, because the reality is, however good the Leopard 2 is an individual tank, what counts is having large numbers of a vehicle like that. And it's certainly better than anything on the Russian side. It's deliberately designed to be better than anything the Russians had. And so it will be important for Ukraine to have them, but they need lots. They can't just have 10 or 12. That won't make a difference. They need hundreds.
Would you say Berlin is mistaken in being concerned about Putin's possible reaction to the delivery of battle tanks then?
I think it's something that, it's right to have been concerned about throughout the conflict. We do have this spectre of nuclear warfare that makes this different from the war against Saddam Hussein in 1990 and 91, say, when he invaded Kuwait. And that means that NATO in general has been more careful, but the alliance has moved forward together, I think, and they've taken these decisions in such a way that countries are not exposed. So I think the hope is that Germany won't feel that the country is exposed by handing tanks over, because other nations will be doing it, and nations unrelated to the Leopard 2 will be doing it, like the UK. And the US has already sent heavier infantry fighting vehicles, the Bradleys. So the door is opening, and nations are doing this together. So I think that should give Berlin a lot of comfort at this point, especially given the progress of the last 11 months, the donations of rocket launchers, the donations of anti-aircraft missile systems, the Patriot batteries have been deployed by the US. These are all things that were considered problematic at one time and have now been deployed to the conflict, and there has been no repercussions. So I think Berlin should be very confident, and I think this is a gesture that would make a huge difference to the Ukrainians and a huge difference to the course of the war on the ground if it is enabled.
Security analyst Justin Crump, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
NATO member Poland is now offering to supply Ukraine with German-made battle tanks, but only as part of an international coalition. The announcement follows talks between Polish President Andrzej Duda and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Wednesday. Experts believe the sophisticated tanks could prove decisive in Kyiv's attempts to push back the Russian invasion. The pledge ramps up the pressure on Germany, which has so far refused to deliver the advanced tanks to Ukraine.
Ukraine needs heavier weapons. That has been Kyiv's message to its Western allies for months. Top of the list, the German-built Leopard 2 battle tank. So far, Western nations have been reluctant, fearing further escalation with a nuclear-armed Russia. But that might be all about to change.
We have decided that the moment for Poland to decisively support Ukraine has come. A company of Leopard tanks will be handed over as part of a coalition.
The offer from Poland's President Andrzej Duda is a welcome one for Kyiv, but there's a catch. Without Germany's approval, other nations cannot supply Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Poland's call for an international coalition to deliver the weapons piles additional pressure on German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. So far, he's been reluctant to commit. But as Russia claims it's making further gains in eastern Ukraine, Kyiv says Berlin's foot-dragging is costing lives.
Only the transfer of weapons will end this war. Otherwise, the war will go on and on. Ukrainian cities will be destroyed and Ukrainian people killed. But we will definitely keep going to the end. It's just that the cost will be very high.
Poland and other NATO allies are leaning ever harder on the German Chancellor to change his tune.
While the discussion about Leopard battle tanks continues, what has already been agreed is the delivery of Marder infantry fighting vehicles. The German army is currently using these light tanks as part of NATO's Very High Readiness Joint Task Force. German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht visited the unit today. She had this to say about the question of Leopard battle tanks.
There's no decision, so we aren't thinking about the question. We've always been quick in implementing decisions, with artillery, with air defence, and now with infantry fighting vehicles. That's why the government hasn't yet taken a decision on battle tanks.
Die Entscheidung über Kampfpanzer ist in der Bundesregierung nicht getroffen.
And it's my pleasure to welcome Johannes Ahl now. He's a German parliamentarian for the governing Social Democrats and a member of the Defense Committee. He's also a former Air Force officer, if I'm not mistaken, and a veteran of German missions to Afghanistan and Mali. Welcome to DW. It's such a pleasure having you here.
Good evening.
You are a veteran. You know how important it is to be properly equipped when going into a battle. Why does Germany not provide Ukraine with battle tanks?
We have very much different lines of operation. On the first time, we stand with the Ukrainian people in solidarity and see every day of this horrible war that they sacrificed all these losses and sacrifices they made to keep their country going and to resist the Russian oppressor. And on the other hand, we also have arguments that we promised to deliver with Zeitenwende. Also to re-strengthen our military capabilities, of restock it after a period of decades of underfunding. And so we also have to take into consideration if we deliver weapons, and this was also an argument over all the year, that if we have weapons that we do not need in the forces, because it's very hard to buy new systems and to get also a restocking in an appropriate amount of time.
So you are saying that Germany would deliver battle tanks if it had spare battle tanks?
You mean, I have to say, our focus switched now from the international missions you named, I took part in, to collective defense and territorial defense. And that means we have to serve and missions like the VJTF, as you already named, with our equipment. At the Bundeswehr is short on material. We have decades of underfunding behind us. This is going to change. But now we are delivering the Marder infantry vehicles, and they are coming out of the stock of the forces. And this is a great political signal. But as well, it could also be a weakening of our forces, because it will be very hard to resupply with new land systems in a considerable amount of time.
But right now, Germany doesn't need them. Ukraine needs them.
We also need them because we have to secure our eastern flank in Poland, and the NATO border is what we defend for freedom and security and peace in Europe.
But doesn't Putin's military gets closer to the eastern flank, the more he's allowed to advance in Ukraine, doesn't he? So wouldn't it be in our best interest as well as NATO countries to send these battle tanks into Ukraine to keep Russia at bay?
I think Ukraine would be helped because the battle tanks would increase the assertiveness of the systems. It would help the survivability, and sure, it would make a difference on the land domain for the battle. This is for sure. But we also have to make sure that we sustain our capabilities, that our soldiers could be trained, and that we can also serve our obligations that we have towards the NATO. And I have a little bit the fear, or it must be calculated very good through, and we have to make an industrial deal with the industry that they increase the production capacities, that we can deliver systems to the Ukraine and also get systems back for our forces, that our soldiers could be trained and also serve the other tasks.
Yeah. Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the Bundestag last year, and after this address that you were present for, you wrote on Instagram that it became clearer than ever to you that Germany needed to do anything in its power to immediately end the war. Is that what is happening right now?
We do a lot. Germany is one of the most generous spenders in aid for the Ukraine. We spent 12 billion euros in the last year. And if you see the system where we come from, the security policy paradigm that we don't deliver weapons in any crisis areas. So we now delivered self-propelled howitzers, we delivered anti-aircraft tanks, we delivered a lot of systems, not even the Bundeswehr have.
A lot,
so we do
but
a lot.
not everything that could be done, right?
Yes, but Olaf Scholz also said in his 4 rules when he explained his Ukraine policy to the parliament that it's also important that we also can sustain our own missions that we have to sustain. And that's our constitutional task that we have to do, and where we also have to look as a defense committee that Bundeswehr can still do their tasks they're assigned to.
Now, the Greens, the Liberals, who are both part of the governing coalition that your Social Democrats are, of course, leading, as well as the opposition, say that Olaf Scholz is being so hesitant because he's intimidated by Putin. Is that the reason? Is it fear of retaliation that is making Germany so slow and so hesitant to take the lead, maybe also in these kinds of moves?
Not at all. I would say that Olaf Scholz is a leader that is very carefully overlooking the options before he's taking a decision. And I don't think this is weakness. This is a strength, and we've decided in the past months to deliver very important capabilities to break the Russian dominance, especially in the artillery domain and with the artillery capabilities. And I think it's very worth thinking over before we deliver this kind of platforms to Ukraine.
He takes a long time to ponder. There used to be a time when other countries used to look to Germany for guidance, right? To see what Germany was doing, to then calibrate what they would do, for Germany to take the first step. Now it seems the other way around, that Germany will only make a move if, the US or France makes a move first. What does that tell us about Germany's leadership position on the, international scene?
I think we had always a very restrained foreign policy. That's our tradition. And this is going to change because other countries expect us to be a leader in Europe and to take the first steps. That's completely right. But we also have a value of multilateralism in our foreign security policy. So that means that we coordinate with other big European countries what we are going to deliver. And as we did with the US, as we did with France, with Great Britain. And now, so the decision came to deliver Patriot and also the Marder vehicles. However, I have to say it again, the forces should not be stripped for this, because we have also our own security interests, our own tasks that need to be done.
Johannes Alt, member of the German Parliament for the Social Democrats. Thank you so much for your time tonight.